Hey, so aloha. There's a lot of conversation happening around this National Association of Realtors settlement that is still going through the courts, but if things go through mid-July, we're gonna have a massive change that is actually monumental when it comes to the way commissions are structured for buyers and sellers, buyers agents, and sellers agents. So let me break it down. Let me talk a little bit about who's gonna get impacted, who's gonna get hurt, who's gonna benefit, and maybe how things are gonna play out in the future. So hang on till the end. So with regards to the National Association of Realtors settlement, it basically is going to be that MLS now no longer can promote the buyer's agent commission in MLS, giving buyers an opportunity to negotiate the buyer's commission or the agent in which they work with that commission, because sellers now no longer have to negotiate with the listing agent to provide an actual commission for the buyer's agent. And on top of that, buyer's agents are now going to need to sign a buyer's representation agreement with their client. So what does that all mean? That seems like a lot. And it is, but it's actually fairly straightforward. It simply means that what used to happen is that the buyers and the sellers would hire agents and the commission was combined and the seller of a property would cover the listing agent commission and the buyer's agent commission together. So historically speaking, a listing agent would ask for about 5 to 6% total and share about half of it with the buyer's agent on that listing. And so what that means is that, let's say that the seller of a property says, yeah, buyer, you are going to get an agent. I have a listing agent. We're going to give them total 6%. And of the 6% that I'm giving to my listing agent, they'll share half of it with you as the buyer's agent. So now there's going to be a decoupling of that commission. It used to be together. It used to be that the sellers would pay for it through their equity at closing. Now they're gonna separate it because of the settlement, and now the listing agent is gonna work with the seller and get just the commission for the listing and not have to negotiate a commission for the person who's selling it, what we call the buyer's agent. So as a result, the sellers are now going to essentially have a reduction in their selling costs because their commission is going to be reduced sometimes as much as half. So instead of a 6% or a 5%, it'll be 2.5% to maybe 3% for that listing commission, because now they no longer have to go ahead and offer on the MLS a buyer's agent commission. So what happens to the buyers? Well, buyers now have the opportunity to not have to pay fully for their services of a buyer's agent. They can negotiate with the agent on what services do they need as a buyer, and then in an a la carte kind of fashion, hire a buyer's agent to do certain things, whether that's to show them some houses or go look on MLS for opportunities, or on top of that, maybe even go negotiate the transaction. Now, what that means for all of these people involved, because remember, there's 4 people involved in that. There's a buyer, there's a seller, there's a listing agent, and there's a selling agent. So now the seller is actually gonna do really well. So they're the first one that we're gonna talk about, and they'll probably do fine because now all of a sudden, they're gonna have less commissions to pay. Now, does that mean that they're gonna reduce the price of the property by that 3%? Probably not. I mean, think about it. If you're a seller and you can save 3%, are you going to reduce your price? Or is the market going to allow you to actually still ask the same amount you were going to before, and you're actually going to make that extra 3% yourself? So sellers are going to benefit. They're going to probably make a little extra money. They got a little less closing costs. So for a seller, do you think that means they're going to reduce the price by 3% because now they have less commissions? Probably not. Think about it. If you're a seller, are you going to reduce your price just because you're going to pay less of 3% on a commission to a buyer's agent? Probably not likely. You're gonna keep that 3% and go out to buy ice cream and go on a vacation, do something else. And so a seller is actually gonna be fine through this. In fact, they're gonna actually stand to make a little bit more. Now, the listing agent, the person that the seller hires to list their property on the MLS, is gonna now just negotiate their side. So they'll say, hey, 2.5%, 3%, I'll list your home, Mr. Seller or Miss Seller, and I'm going to do everything I can to get you a great buyer, but you only need to pay me 2.5 to 3%. So that's great for the seller's agent. So now, going forward, a listing agent's gonna continue to do really well. So the name of the game now is to definitely try to find listings. So the seller side looks pretty good. Now on the buyer side, a buyer is now going to have the option to work directly with the seller or the seller's agent on negotiating the transaction, or they can hire a buyer's agent. So the buyers are going to have a little bit more challenge because of the fact that brand new buyers now might have to face a situation where they need to hire an agent because they don't know what they're doing. They never bought a house before. They don't know how to do an inspection. They're not sure exactly what the resources are in order to get through that transaction successfully. They may not know exactly all the ways to negotiate. And what's the closing process? What does a title company do? Escrow company do? And that's where a buyer's agent comes in to help a brand new buyer. Same with brand new investors. New investors, they buy multifamilies or commercial properties. They're like, hey, this is brand new for me. I don't know how to negotiate. I don't know how this works. And so therefore, they're going to also want to hire a buyer's agent. So what that means for the buyer is now they're going to technically need to come out of pocket for that buyer's agent commission. So that's 2.5 to 3%. So now think about that. What used to be the 3% that the seller would pay at closing, the buyer needs to now figure out how to get that 3% to pay their agent. Now, of course, they could negotiate in the purchase price with the seller and say, hey, I'll offer you this amount, but you do need to cover my agent of 3%. So it's negotiated off the MLS book. So not a horrible thing. In fact, in the commercial space, that's oftentimes what we do right now. But in the residential space, this is a brand new thing. So it's very more a new complicated matter for buyer's agents, because now buyer's agents are like, wait, my 3% automatic commission is now no longer on the table. I got to negotiate it. And with buyers that are brand new, man, many of them are stretching. I mean, remember the first time you bought a house? Most of my friends who are brand new buyers, they're stretching to put 3% down or 5% down. And then now if they're gonna have to cover a 3% commission on top of that, that means that in a sense, they're gonna have to double or even more their down payment. So that's a huge amount for a lot of buyers who are brand new to come out of pocket with. And so that's gonna hurt a lot of brand new buyers as a result of this change. Now, of course, they can try to negotiate it in, but that's gonna be very different. So buyers that are brand new buyers, I think they're gonna be impacted for sure. And then buyers agents, definitely going to change the field, because now buyers agents need to learn how to become very skilled at their craft, because now buyers have many agents to choose from. And if they have to sign an exclusive arrangement with a buyer's agent, then buyers are going to be much more picky to say, hey, I'm going to find the person that's been doing this a long time, got experience in this particular market, maybe knows the kind of people I know, knows how to negotiate what I need. And so as a result, buyer's agents are going to have to work harder to get those buyers to work with them. And on top of that, they're going to have to work harder to earn that 3% commission that they were so used to getting before. So definitely some changes that are going to make a huge difference. So what does this mean going forward? I mean, I think the change is actually not a horrible thing. Again, the commercial space, we've been doing this in the commercial side for years. On this commercial side, as buyers and buyer's agents, we're having to negotiate the commission on the buyer side, and it works out pretty well. Sometimes the seller does cover it. Sometimes the buyers cover it as part of the closing costs that they're putting in. But in the big picture, this is going to be a massive shift, and it's going to be a big difference for a lot of people trying to understand how all this is going to work. But here's the cool thing though, is that change is good. Change always leads to opportunity. Opportunity leads to opportunity for us to grow. And for us to grow means that we're going to increase, we're going to take it up to another level. So honestly, I think as realtors, it's going to push up the caliber of realtors in America, because now we can't just luxuriously wait for an automatic commission. We're going to need to work really hard now to make sure that we are earning our commission both on the listing side and the selling side. So stay tuned for more. There's going to be so much more information, I think, as this settlement continues to unfold and gets approved through the courts. And so we'll keep you updated and let you know what our perspective is. But stay tuned and be sure to follow and subscribe, like if you enjoy this, and more content will be coming in the future. Aloha.